Hey everybody, my name's Ken's Wild and welcome to day number 7 of working with Mustang Cherokee. We're going to begin today's session by doing a little bit of feed and retreat to establish that connection and start the session on a positive note. In the previous session, we talked about the prerequisites of starting a horse under saddle, and we gave an evaluation to Mr. Cherokee to see what all he knows, doesn't know, and kind of give us a basis for where we need to start. Now, the goal is to focus on each behavior and work on getting Cherokee a lot better at performing these tasks. A quick update on targeting. I'm trying to incorporate this into every training session. Sometimes you guys might see it, sometimes you might not, because we are kind of limited on time. However, Cherokee is starting to slowly get better at touching the target and understanding that when he touches his nose to it, that is when he gets a reinforcer. One of the prerequisites we'll be working on today is desensitization. So this is something that Cherokee's a little bit nervous about, specifically with the lunge whip. And so I'm going to take some time to slowly get him used to it. I'm going to rub it all over him. I'm going to throw it on his back and take it off his back. And I'm going to reinforce accordingly because I want him to understand that the lunge whip is not something to be afraid of. Biggest thing is you want to be able to put that lunge whip anywhere on the horse's body and they're able to stand still, comfortably, and content. You might notice right about here that I go to put that lunge whip around his hind leg and he lifts that hind leg. He's kind of starting to express that he's a little bit uncomfortable with that. And so this is something through repetition. Again, I'm just going to throw it on his leg and take it off his leg, and on his leg and take it off his leg. And I'm going to reinforce every few times when he is standing, just to continue to show him that he's doing a good job. But when he stands politely and he lets me put it on him, that's when he gets a reinforcer. I'm also using some negative reinforcement with this. In other words, when he stands still, I release that pressure by stopping to put it on his leg. One thing I have observed is that Cherokee dislikes when the lunge whip is flying in the air around him. You'll see here that I'm going up and down from side to side and it's flying above his head, by his shoulders and stuff like that. And he's moving around a lot. You also might notice right here, he actually tries to plow through me. And so it's super important that I start trying to set a boundary for safety purposes. Right here, I'm able to put it around. He stands still for a few steps, and so I'm going to reinforce that behavior. Again, we start up again and he starts moving around. And this is where I start applying some negative reinforcement, and that when he stands still, I'm going to stop waving that lunge whip around. Right here, he goes to step in front of me again. I make him back up. Here we are again. He's trying to go away, and I'm just trying to reinforce that boundary and get him more comfortable with it. Here, he stood for a moment. I'm going to release that pressure and reinforce. Again, this is a mix of positive and negative reinforcement. After a few more minutes of working on this, you can see that Cherokee is allowing me to move that lunge whip from side to side in the air over his head and all that good stuff. He's slowly starting to build his confidence with this and understand that when it's flying in the air, it's really not a threat and it's not going to hurt him. The next behavior we're going to be working on is picking up all 4 feet. Cherokee desperately needs his hooves done. I am unsure the last time they were done. The people I got him from said that it had been a while because he wasn't being very cooperative. And so I want to see how he does holding his feet up when I mess with his feet, because if he's going to stand well, then I'll try and trim him. If he's going to have some issues, I will probably just end up sedating him. I might do that anyway just to try and make his first trim with me a positive, pleasurable experience. As I navigate to his hind end, you might notice that I'm standing at his shoulder, and that's because I am least likely to get kicked here. I go to squeeze that leg, he picks it up, and he even holds it for me, which is something I'm really happy to see. I reinforce that behavior. One thing that I notice is that every single time I go to work on picking up his feet, he starts to enter that freeze response, right? His lips become tight, his head's high, his ears are kind of somewhat pinned, and he's showing all of these signs that he's shutting down. And so this is an indicator that when he has had his hooves done in the past, when he's had his legs handled, it may not have always been in the nicest manner because he tends to try and dissociate the second I start working on it. Next, I'm going to practice a common farrier stance, which is where his front leg is between my knees. I kind of hold it there for a little bit, and then I'm going to release that pressure and reinforce. You might notice that he backs up. Like the second I put his foot down, he starts to back up. I don't want to encourage that behavior, so I'm going to make him come back to where he was, and then I'm going to reinforce. Him backing up is a sign that he's just trying to exit the situation. We already know that he's a little bit uncomfortable with his hooves being handled, so I just want to show him that he can stand in one place, and that when he does, that's when he gets place the reinforcer. Again, I go to pick up that leg. You might notice that I'm patting on it with my hand. I just want to make sure that he's comfortable with me making all kinds of noises. I go to put it between my knees again. I pat on it even more, and he's really just standing here. He's definitely looking at me. You can see his head is turned towards me, and that ear is focused pretty tentatively on me. And then I go to reinforce, and here we are again. He's not really chewing. Just another sign that he is shutting down. So I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to give him lots of love and attention. He does start to chew that reinforcer, and I just want him to just come back to reality, because like I said before, if he is shut down, if he is in that freeze mode, he is not going to learn anything. He's just going to be off in another dimension as I work on him, and I want him to learn how to do these things, not just do them while he's shut down. After giving Cherokee some love and moving to his other side, we're going to repeat the exact same process. I'm going to slowly bring my hand down his legs, ask him to pick up that hoof, and when he does, he kind of gives me a little bit of resistance, but he does pick it up. I'm going to pat on it, make sure he's comfortable with that. He is, so I'm going to reinforce. Then I'm going to try and put it in between my legs, pat on it again. Just all of these things to prepare for him when I do start bringing my equipment, because they make a lot of noise. They can be super weird for a horse who's not used to it. So anything that I can do right now to prepare him is my ultimate goal. Through time, patience, and reinforcers, Cherokee is starting to shut down a little bit less. You'll notice that he's eating those reinforcers as I give them to him. His lips aren't super tight. His head is still a little bit high, but he is focusing and he is in the here and now. He's not dissociated, and these are all good signs that he's starting to grow more comfortable with the process. So I'm going to get a little bit ballsy here and ask Cherokee for some more. I'm going to lift that hind leg and I'm going to investigate it a little bit more closely. I'm doing this because he really hasn't shown me any signs of wanting to kick me. He's definitely not the biggest fan of his feet being handled, but he hasn't shown any signs of aggression or anything like that. All very good things. Now, I'm definitely going to be trimming his hooves here in the next week or so. I don't know if I'm going to do it under sedation. I still think it would be very wise for his very first time having them done here. It really just depends on the days. So that is something I highly recommend y'all stay tuned for in the near future. Next behavior we're going to work on is backing up. So my ultimate goal is for me to be able to lean forward just like this, and Cherokee backs up. Obviously, he isn't quite too sure what this means just yet, so I'm going to show you guys how I work on teaching this behavior. So I start off with the least amount of pressure possible, right? So I'm going to lean forward, which is the ultimate cue that I want. Then I'm going to walk towards him. I'm going to wiggle that lead rope a little bit, and then he backs up that step. So I'm going to release that pressure and reinforce. Biggest thing, you start with the least amount of pressure possible and then slowly increase it till you get what you're looking for. Right here, he doesn't even go to the wiggling, so I hold that lead rope, apply some more pressure, and then he does eventually back up that step. So I'm going to release that pressure and reinforce. Over time, Cherokee will start to realize that when I lean forward, that means back up. If he backs up the second I lean forward, there's not going to be any extra pressure. I'm not going to wiggle that lead rope. I'm not necessarily going to walk towards him. He'll start to realize that the second I lean forward, that means he backs up and he gets a reinforcer. Obviously, he is still very new to this. It's going to take time, patience, and he'll catch on to it eventually, as will your horse as well. So right here, Cherokee is able to back up off of me leaning and the wiggle of the lead rope. It's just a step, but it's something. Here, I'm leaning towards him. He starts to shift his weight. I wiggled that lead rope, and then he backs up a step. There is something that's called the 3-second rule, and basically if you do not respond to that horse's behavior within 3 seconds, they're not going to be able to associate your response with the behavior. In other words, if you ask him to back up and he backs up a step and you take 5 to 10 seconds before you release that pressure, he's not going to realize that that release of pressure was because he backed up. So it's super important that when you release pressure, when you apply the bridge signal and reinforce, that you do it almost immediately if you want the horse to understand. Now we're going to move on to lateral flexion. So lateral flexion is basically when you bring that horse's nose to their shoulder. What this does is this helps work on responsiveness. It is a building block behavior for when you teach them to turn and bend throughout their body. There's just a lot of things that lateral flexion can be useful for. So I want Cherokee to give to pressure. You'll notice that he's moving his butt around. I'm following at his shoulder, and he's just really not understanding what I'm asking him to do. Horses who meet pressure with pressure are in self-defense mode. So I'm applying pressure to try and get him to do some lateral flexion. He's applying pressure by backing up and kind of bracing against that pressure. My job as a trainer is to bring him out of that self-defense mode and increase his receptivity. In other words, help him be open to new ideas, help him be open to responding to my pressure and not feel like he has to brace against it. He has stopped moving around. I'm just going to stand at his shoulder and hold that lead rope until he gives to that pressure. You might notice that I'm not like holding the lead rope with a death grip. I have it just barely picked up, just barely enough for him to feel that pressure. Right here, he finally gives. So I'll play it one more time. Right there is when he gives to the pressure. He stops bracing against it for a brief moment, so I'm going to release that pressure altogether and then reinforce, because that is what I was looking for. Now we're going in the opposite direction, and you'll notice that he flexes no problem. He doesn't brace against me. He doesn't try and fight it. He just immediately gives me that flexion that I'm looking for. Horses might flex one way better than the other for a variety of reasons. It could be that they have some sort of an imbalance, like maybe they have something out of alignment, they need a chiropractor, they need a massage therapist, they could be sore in some area, or they could just be more comfortable with the human on one side versus the other. Because Cherokee has a little bit of handling, he's unsure of humans, it's entirely possible that he's just not a huge fan of me on this side. Horses have a dominant side, just how humans have like a dominant hand, right or left-handed. It's the same thing with horses. Horses are going to have a side that they prefer humans on, and really the only thing that it means is that you might have to do more work on one side versus the other. After we go around and around and around and around in a few more circles and spend some more time working on this, eventually Cherokee does give. Right here, he just barely turns that nose towards me, stops fighting that pressure, so I take that pressure away, and then I'm going to reinforce. Last but certainly not least, we're going to work on vertical flexion. So unlike lateral flexion, which is from side to side, vertical flexion is more up and down. Vertical flexion has many benefits. It will help when it comes time to teach collection. It helps with relaxation, responsiveness, and it is just another building block behavior that he is going to need to know when we're learning more advanced stuff later on down the road. There's a few different ways that you can work on teaching vertical flexion. I'm just going to work on this one today. I'm leaning down in front of him. I'm applying some pressure with that lead rope, and I'm just going to wait for him to drop his head. This can be a little bit time consuming. You might have to do some encouragement to get them to drop their head for that first time around. But you'll see right about here, he just slowly drops that head. And so I'm going to reinforce, because that is exactly what I was looking for. Very similar to what we just saw with lateral flexion, I want Cherokee to give to pressure. I want him to feel comfortable enough that he doesn't have to brace against my pressure. I want him to respond to it. And this just takes time and patience and a lot of work of growing his confidence and getting him more comfortable with the things that we do. As I'm holding that pressure, again, you'll see that he just barely drops his head, so I release the pressure and reinforce. Before we close off this video, don't forget to go and check out our books. I've got 3 books on the shelf, and they are all on a variety of topics relating to horses. We also have a podcast out there. It is about the life lessons horses have to teach us. And we also have a merch store, so you can go and get some cool fancy merch, sport it, send us a picture of you wearing it, and we'll give you a discount on your next purchase. With that being said, I'd like to give y'all a friendly reminder that all of the pictures and videos, all of the content you see at Wild Child is funded by myself. I like to do this at absolutely no cost to you guys, because the world is so expensive right now, and I really just want to help make a better world for the horses we all love so much. However, if you would like to help financially support the sanctuary horses, the materials we need to make and edit these videos, I have a list of different ways that you can donate. I'm not a registered nonprofit. I'm just an LLC trying to make a living, support the animals, and help horses and humans overcome their problems while advocating for kinder, more humane horsemanship methods. With that being said, if you have not already, please hit the red subscribe button. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, our podcast, and all of the many, many other things that we have available. Thank you all for watching. Stay strong, stay true, stay wild, and we'll see y'all next time.